Hi, so I guess if we're ready, I want to introduce myself first quickly. I'm Ann Ekman and I work with the Fenwick Foundation. I recognize some of you all from emails and past events. So I want to welcome you today. We're joined by Esther Mitchell. She's with the Prince George's County Master Gardener Program. I see everyone is muted. If you have a question as the presentation is ongoing, if you think you might forget it, if you want to type in the group chat, I'll keep an eye out for those towards the end. Or if you want to just hold on to them, we'll open up for questions as we get through the program. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Esther. Thank you again for being with us.
You're welcome. I just want to talk about fall gardening and some things that you can do to make your garden successfully, during the fall. First off, when we talk about fall gardening, we're talking about planting crops for harvest before and after frost. You will notice that some things can take a hard frost, and some plants will only be able to take a light frost. Planting crops that can overwinter for spring, like garlic and onions. This is the best time to plant garlic and have it in the ground so that you can harvest it in the spring. Protective gardening in a cold frame greenhouse or under row covers, so that you can continue to garden without the infestation of insects or diseases, and cover crops after you finish gardening to add organic matter to your soil so that you'll be ready for summer planting. Okay. Oh, I'm going backwards. Okay. So there are several different types of fall crops. We're going to talk about seeding, transplanting, and the plant schedule. First off, there are crops that are known as cole crops, C-O-L-E crops. And those type of crops are known as broccoli, cabbage, collard, cauliflower, kohlrabi, and Brussels sprout. They are in the same family, and they're known as cole crops. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one. Broccoli should be planted 10 weeks before the first frost date. And it's important to mulch around broccoli. Broccoli matures in 70 days. So if you plant it, you have to count 70 days forward from the time you plant it before you can realize that you get a harvest. And you should feed the plants 3 weeks after they've been put in the garden. At this point, broccoli, usually you would have them in the ground if you were growing them by seeds in July. So you would be buying transplants at this point in time. Cabbage, you can plant them 6 to 8 weeks before the first frost, and it takes about 70 days for them to mature. So you can start planting cabbage round about now. The ideal time would have been like around in August. Let's see, we have lettuce, collards. Let's talk about collards. Collards take about the same time as cabbage, 70 days. And there are some collards that you can get earlier, depending on the variety. and you can plant them they mature between 60 and 70 days, and you can just take the leaves off of the collards and they'll continue to grow. Cauliflower mature within 60 days, so you have a short time frame on them. If you want to have them sooner, you can. Then we have this plant known as kohlrabi. This is the plant with the purple and the white down here. Kohlrabi is like a cabbage, and it tastes similar to turnips, but it's in the cabbage family. And the bulb portion is edible, and so is the leaves on the kohlrabi edible. It's a sweeter version of a turnip. Then you have Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts take 90 days to mature, so at this point you would be planting transplants for Brussels sprouts. And all of these plants like cool weather. That's why we call it fall planting, because they like cool weather. They are cold hardy, and some are quick maturing. You also have what is known as the leaf family, the greens, which are your leaf lettuce, your head lettuce, your spinach, your arugula, your Asian greens, your mustard greens, and your cilantro. And then you have root crops, your rutabagas, your beets, your carrots, your turnips, your parsnips, your radishes. So there are three different groups: your cold crop groups, your greens, and your root groups, your root crops. Your lettuces, your greens, these in this box are leaf lettuce. Leaf lettuce mature anywhere between 30 and 45 days. So you can grow leaf lettuce continually. And once you grow it, once it gets to a certain height that you like, because you can eat them small or you can let them get big leaves, just cut the leaves off and they'll grow back for a second time. So you can have lettuce all winter long with leaf lettuce, that is, for that. Now your head lettuce is because you can get the smaller ones that mature faster, or you can wait and let them get larger leaves, and that can do it. You would have to get transplant. Of course, for the leaf lettuce and the head lettuce, you could possibly sow the seeds now, because it is a 45-day time frame, and they can take a little light frost. The same thing with spinach. Spinach is, you can sow them now, and they usually are ready to harvest within 45 days. So that's something that you may want to think about getting as well. Arugula is great, and then there's a whole bunch of Asian greens such as bok choy and pak choy, and what's this other one I'm trying to think of? There's another choy, gai choy, and they are all greens, and they're something that you should try if you haven't tried them. And they are very good. They have a different flavor than spinach or cabbage or collard greens. And I think you would enjoy some of the taste of those. So you should try some of the Asian greens to see how you like them and make them part of your diet. The root crops, such as rutabagas and beets and carrots, turnips, parsnips, radishes, and garlic, are all crops that you can try. Now, some of these crops you can buy that are small, like carrots, for instance. You can get the long type, or you can have the baby type. So whatever you prefer, you can get them. And you know, carrots come in different colors. You have your purple, your orange, your red, and your yellow. And you have some white as well. And these carrots, they all have a different flavor to them. So I would recommend that you try them, because you will find out that they have a good taste to them and you would like them. Beets come in red and yellow, and you can easily use them to decorate your various foods if you want to. Now, I'm looking on my sheet. Beets, you would want to start in around the between June and August if you're starting from seed. Otherwise, by the transplant. Root crops can take a light frost, and they usually develop in a larger, they need a longer time period. So you would possibly get them now as transplant. Parsnips are another type of plant similar to carrots, but have a distinct flavor different from carrots. And that is another root vegetable that is good to try. Garlic, this is the time to plant garlic. Garlic is a fall plant. If you put them in the ground and you harvest them in the spring, so they will overwinter. And the radishes down here, you see they come in different colors as well. They have different tastes. You can get some radishes that have a watermelon-y type taste to it, and they are good to add to your salads and things of that nature. And I think these are turnips down here, the purple, the white, or they call them gold, and the scarlet. There are different types of turnips, and they also have a different flavor. Each one has a different flavor. Turnips do take a while to grow, so but you can put them in the ground now if you're starting them from seed now, and they do tolerate a hard frost. So if you are you know, if we have an early frost or hard frost or a late frost, it doesn't really matter, because you would harvest turnips probably in the early spring. So some of these fall crops you're going to harvest in late winter or early spring. So once you plant crops, you will harvest them before a hard frost. Would be these crops: radishes, cauliflower, mustard green, Swiss chard, carrots, and beets. They all need to be harvested before a hard frost, so that you can get the flavor from them. And if you harvest them while they are small, you get more of the benefit nutritionally wise than if you wait till you get these big leaves. Like in this picture here, the leaves are really big. And if you're going for the leaves, that's one thing. If you're going for the stalks, then that's another thing. You may want to wait till they get big. It's just dependent on how you're going to eat it. If you're going for the leaves, then you want to harvest them while they're small. Okay. Plants that withstand a hard frost are broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, lettuce. You can grow lettuce year round. You can grow lettuce. There are some lettuce that will not bolt with the summer heat. The thing that would get lettuce would be the humidity. So I would suggest that you plant your lettuce and keep them in a cool place in the summer. But in the fall, you want to plant them outside because they can benefit from the cool air. Peas, turnip, kale. Kale usually tastes better after the first hard frost. So if you're planting kale, then you want to wait till after the first frost and then you can get it. But kale will continue to grow until March if you leave it alone. So you want to pick it up. Spinach is the same way. And so the little broccoli heads called broccoli rabe. Some crops can just overwinter and you can pick them in the spring, like arugula and broccoli, garlic. You can do the same thing with kale and leeks and onions. The onion family, you plant them now, and garlic is another one where you plant now, but you harvest them in the spring of the year. You can also do that with spinach and kale. So you can put the seeds in the ground now and then come back in spring and get them. But if you were wanting to get kale or spinach now, then I would suggest you use transplants at this point in time. Cool nights do slow down plant growth. So, and vegetables take longer to mature during the fall days. So there are some plants, the plants that we just talked about are the ones that can benefit from the cool nights and the shorter days. The days that sun angle is lower in the sky, so the light is less intense and there's less sunlight energy for the plant. So it takes longer for them to mature. That's why for some they overwinter. These environmental conditions add sugar to crops like cabbage and broccoli. We talked about the cold crops. And lettuce and spinach will not bolt. Reason lettuce and spinach bolt and try to go to seed before they and really taste bitter is because of the heat. But the cool temperatures make it so that they will not bolt. And there are some varieties now on the market that can take the summer heat. But like I said, the humidity is what usually will get to this lettuce and spinach. So if you are going out now, an easier way is just to start with transplant. And if you go to your nurseries now, they do have the fall plants out. And this is one way where you get like 2 or 3 weeks start on your plants, and you can harvest them within a shorter period of time. So broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, and collards are just a few of the transplants that you might see in the store that you can buy and plant in your garden and let them continue to grow. But you have a head jump on it, on the season. Plants that you can sow directly into the ground now, I would say would be kale, spinach, lettuce, and kohlrabi, and possibly collards, because collards can take a pretty good frost. So I would plant them now in the ground because they are, if you're going to do seed, this is the time to plant them now. And by the time they come up, the temperature should be cooling off. Although I would say that because we are steadily warming up, our winters are steadily getting warm, that it takes a longer time for the soil to cool down and the nights to cool down. So you have to be careful about that. If you direct sow them in the now, this would be a good time because our frost won't come until usually November, our hard frost. What you need for seeds to germinate and grow is that the soil clay must be amended. Clay soil must be amended. The soil should be moist and crumbly. It can't be hot or dry. Seeds need cooler temperature and moisture to germinate and grow. So you need to amend the soil so that when you water the plant, the soil can hold some of the moisture so that the plant can get it. And plants that grow slow, like your root crops, need a consistent moisture in the soil, or they will not grow as well. So all your root crops need to do it, like beets and carrots and parsnips and radishes and turnips, and they need the soil to be moist and well drained, and that will make them grow well. Take care of the soil first, and that will take care of your plant. The problem with a lot of plants that don't seem to do well, it's not that it's really the plant as much as it is the soil. So amend the soil with compost. You can buy leaf grow at the stores, but amend your soil, make it as rich as you can, and then you can plant in it without any problems. Hard soil is not good for plants other than daikon radishes that will they grow down really long and they will break up the soil. Seeds become dormant at high temperatures. So if you're going to be planting, because we are getting this extraordinary days of 90 degrees, this is not good for cool season crops. It should be, we should be in the 80s about now, and we are steadily going up into the 90s. This is a good example of how the climate is changing and warming up. The maximum soil temperature for lettuce and spinach is 70 degrees. That's the maximum, which means it can benefit from something lower than 70 degrees. The maximum temperature for peas, or the optimum, is 70 degrees. And for other vegetables, it is 80 degrees. That's the maximum. So in these 90-degree temperatures, if you were to seed right now, your plants will probably not start to germinate until the temperature cools off. You can seed it now. Just remember where you seed it so you don't go put something in that area without and forgot that you seeded, because they will not germinate until the temperature cools down. So you want to prepare the soil by watering before you sow. And when you sow, it's best to sow your seeds in the late afternoon so that germination can start when the temperatures are cool. So they would start overnight, because the temperature usually cool off during the nighttime. But if you sow during the midday, they will not start to germinate until the temperature cools down. You because it's winter, you want to or fall plants, you want to plant the seeds just slightly deeper than what you would have if you were planting spring seeds. I would cover the seeds with potting soil and keep the soil cool and moist. So you may want to, if you're planting in the ground, you want to lightly cover it with compost. If you are planting in pots or in a raised bed type of thing, then I would cover it with compost still, but only very lightly. You don't want to mound compost up on the plant, but just a smattering, less than an inch of compost around, so that to keep the soil cool and moist. And because it's hot, you would need to maybe water that area that you're seeding twice a day. So the planting schedule for most of these is 10 to 12 weeks out before a hard frost. Now, because our winters have not been as cold as they normally have been, and the medium temperature has come up 1 degree, we could possibly extend the time when you start to set out transplants or seeds. So you may be able to start now to sow your carrots, your collards, your beets, your lettuce, your radishes, and your kale. You can start to sow them now. But just know, as long as the temperature stays at 90 degrees, or some of them will not germinate until the temperature drops. So 8 to 10 weeks out before the first hard frost. So let's say November 15th is when we have the first hard frost. You would count 8 to 10 weeks back, and that's when you would start to plant. So you would be planting around about September to October time frame. So 6 to 8 weeks out, you want to sow spinach, you want to plant garlic, shallots, and onions. Some of the protective covering that you can use are floating row covers, which is easy to get, cold frames, hoop houses, and greenhouses. What you see in the picture is something of a hoop house, and we can modify a hoop house just by using PCP piping and row covers. Floating row covers provide 10 to 15 degrees protection for your plant. So you can really garden all the way up until midwinter, probably till the end of December if we do not have any snow. Row covers are made of lightweight woven synthetic material and that you would put over your plant to prevent the entry of pests. And you can use this both in the spring when you're starting your plants for summer and in the fall to keep pests off of them, and also to provide the protection against real cold weather. A cold frame is sort of like a transparent enclosure. It's built low to the ground and protects your plant from extreme coldness or extreme wet weather. The cold frame is usually made of a box with a glass top, as you see in the picture, and the top allows sun comes in and prevent the heat from escaping, so that you can extend or start a season much earlier than you can if it was just out in the open air. So you can start your spring planting a lot earlier, or you can extend your summer planting into the fall. So it works as a mini greenhouse to extend the growing season. Oops. And here you see a cold frame. They're very simple. You can get a window, one part of a window, and use it over a box. You know, have it as one of the forms over the box and put hinges on it so that you can lift it up. Very simple method. You can continue herbs in a cold frame that normally would be coming to an end, such as chives, oregano, sage, and thyme. These are plants that come back a lot, and they would benefit from a cold frame. Hoop houses are tunnels of polyethylene or something similar, and they're in a semi-shape. You could do the same thing on a garden bed or on a raised bed just by getting bendable PCP pipe and putting a row cover over it, and you would have a hoop house for your plants, and it will let in the sunlight and the rain, but it will keep the bugs and insects out. And then you have the formal greenhouse structure, which is made basically of glass. And this greenhouse structure allows heat to come in, and but it requires other equipment like a fan for the summer so that you don't want to burn up your plant. So you need something to let the air out. And in the wintertime, you want to keep the air warm, so you would need a heater. A greenhouse is a very formal structure, and it requires a lot of time and energy so that you know when to turn on the fan. You can have an automatic switch for that when the temperature gets to be a certain level, and the same thing with the heater. This is a very formal style of a hoop house. The greenhouse is the main structure, um, and you have the same thing with cold frame. It is the larger form of a cold frame. Oops, let me see. I went too far. Okay. Crops, and I think we already talked about crops that overwinter. So, there are different varieties of the same vegetable. For example, greens, you can have leafy lettuce, leaf lettuce, and head lettuce. You can have arugula. You can have Asian green. All of them are different varieties, and each one has a slightly different flavor. So you might want to try a bunch of lettuces to see which one you really like, and then that's the one you can buy. The same thing with radishes. There are different types of radishes. You have the long ones that look almost like a carrot, and then you have the ones that are short and round like a beet. But each one has a different flavor. So you want to make sure that you at least have a variety so that you know which ones you really like. Excuse me. And you try something different. So there are different varieties, and mark the variety so you know the next time if it tastes good, you want to know that variety so that you can buy it again. If it doesn't taste good, you want to know that variety so you don't buy it again. For consideration of when you're going to start your seed or transplant, start them in the shade and in the cooler part of your yard, and then transplant them to where they want to go. So you may have to start them in pots and then transplant them to their beds once it gets a little cool. I think we covered this about the light. Light determines when a plant is going to germinate. It's also going to determine when it matures, and it also determines how it develops. Some plants, because they don't get a lot of light, has to overwinter because they're going to develop very slowly. And then you have some that will develop faster, depending on, some plants don't need a lot of light, like Your leaf lettuce can deal with 4 hours of sunlight, whereas your kale may need just a little bit longer, like 6 hours. Oh, we won't do it with that. So for late August, early September, if you're planting by seed, these plants should be in the ground. Your beets, your spinach, your carrots, your broccoli, your endive, your kale, your turnips, and your lettuce. They should already be in the ground. The seeds, that is. So this is the time to go out and seed if you want to plant these particular crops. And here we have this picture. For September, to winterize your garden, you want to pull up and compost spent plants. In October, you want to do the same thing. You want to cover your peppers and your tomato plants with row cover to prolong production and to prevent any diseases and to prevent any cold snaps from getting to them, because the peppers and tomatoes are warm season plants. When you're finished, you want to remove and store your stakes and cages. And if you plant a cover crop, then you won't have to fertilize as much in the spring of the year. All you would do would be tilling whatever you plant under. In November, you want to cover your empty bed with shredded leaves. This will also fertilize the soil. You want to mulch any overwintering carrots, leeks, winter onions, radishes, and parsnips with clean straw. Do not use hay. Hay have weed seeds in them, whereas straw, you want to make sure you buy your straw from reputable dealers, because if you don't and you get hay in there, you'll have a lot of weeds coming up. And you want to get a soil sample for your spring planting. And it's best not to plant the tomatoes in the same spot that you planted them in last time, or your lettuce in the same spot. You want to maybe switch spots so that you can keep the nutrients in the soil from being used up. And there tells you where they have seeded some, looks like spinach and lettuce. Here we have some more example. Here's a good example of a hoop house type environment on a ground or a raised bed, where you see these wires coming down, and the row cover is going to cover over that, and that is going to preserve that from any insect biting holes in the plant and all. And it's going to keep it from a lot of sunlight. You can use that also with these leaf lettuce for a lot to prevent a whole lot of sunlight from coming in. And here you see where you can have many hoop houses to preserve any vegetables that you have. Now, the arches would have to be longer if you're having tomato plants or peppers. But this gives you some idea, and it also keeps things, deer and raccoons and squirrels and groundhogs away as well. And notice they only keeping it down with a brick. You can see the brick in this one that's closer to the end and one up here. You can see the bricks. And here's some more pictures of people, and you see the straw, how they're burying some of the plants with straw to maintain it from the cold and to keep the soil warm. Here you have various pictures of leaf and lettuce and spinach and onions and oops. So for a healthy lawn garden, you want to clean up and remove any plant debris. You want to leave the vegetable roots in place, dig in or remove summer mulch and add and mix in compost or farm manure that's been aged so that you can replenish the soil for next spring. You want to plant a cover crop if you want to do that, or you're going to cover your ground with tree leaves, or you can also go to the dollar store and buy some weed cloth and put that over your beds, and also you can put that over your beds and put bricks around it to keep it so that the wind won't blow it away. So this is what you're going to do for your perennial vegetable plant. You want to cut 2-inch stubs after frost. You want to cut them to 2 inches and add 4 to 6 inches of mulch. With strawberries, you want to mulch with straw or organic, 4 inches deep after the soil freezes. So this will be after a hard frost. You want to remove any canes from the raspberry and blackberries, and if you have blueberries, protect with pine bark mulch because blueberries like acidic soil. And you want to compost around the base of the bush. You protect all perennial vegetables from freezing with mulch around the base of the plant. Remove all rotten fruit from the ground, and this is around trees. Insect infestation lasts through the winter. So I would recommend that you remove rotten fruit all the time. Any fruit that falls to the ground should be removed, or you get not only insects but rodent infestation. But certain insects will overwinter because of the soil. They'll overwinter in the soil, and certain diseases also will overwinter. So if you had a problem with, let's say, your peppers, you may have that same problem next year because certain diseases will overwinter and come back. That's why you want to clean up all the leaves and rotten fruit and remove it so that you don't give these diseases and insects a chance to overwinter. We want to remove any disease tomato. In fact, pull up the whole plant. Do not toss it on your compost pile. Throw it away in the trash. You want to bag and discard it with the trash. You want to remove dead branches from roses and fruit trees. Only the dead branches. You can prune once it you can prune probably like around in October, November. You want to leave some of your flowers seed heads on so that birds can get some food for the winter. And perennials heave out of the ground because they weren't planted at the right depth. So you want to make sure you mulch the ground after freezing so that it keeps the ground warm, and the plants, as soon as we get a warm spell, then another cold spell, the plant won't try to heave out of the ground. And always use net. If you are in a place where you have a lot of deer, bird netting, deer, some call it deer netting, some call it bird netting, any kind of netting that's not big enough for the deer's nose to get through, it's going to be good to keep the deer out of your area where you have your vegetables. Okay, wait a minute. We need to go back just one more. Okay. You want to build a simple compost bin for, you want to throw plants that are not diseased there. You can make your own compost. You can put your leaves there and your grass clippings in your compost bin, and let it overwinter, and in the summertime you would turn it, and you could have compost to put back into the ground, which will enrich the soil. You want to plant spring bulbs in around October, around about the 1st of October, including garlic. Plant cover crops, clean and sharpen your tools, and plan for next year's garden. And with that, I will stop, and we will so I want to give you some resources that you can check out. The Home and Garden Information Center has a wealth of resources. The Master Gardener page on the web has some more resources that you can use. Our extension office is an excellent source to get information on planting, on your plant problem, what to plant, how to start a garden, how to design a garden. You can get all of that from these first 3 sites. Visit the Facebook, our Master Gardener Facebook page, and see the information there. They have a lot of information every day. There's something new that is up there. And my name and email is the last, estherm@umd.edu. And you can also email me and I can help you out. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator for Prince George's County, and you can easily get me by email. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. So we'll go ahead and open it up now if anybody has any questions. I'm going to start with one that somebody typed to me. They were wondering, they like lots of vegetables, it sounds like, and they're interested in starting, but they only have room for a small garden. Do you have to have space? They wanted to know, like, they know a lot of vegetables take up a lot of space. Or is it okay to sort of do a small garden, and do you have any recommendations for a smaller garden?
Yes, you can do a smaller garden. And let me tell you, you can do container gardening by, you can get 5-gallon buckets. I did this with one girl. I told her what to do, and she is so excited. All her vegetables came up and everything. A 5-gallon bucket, you can put one tomato plant in there. Another 5-gallon bucket, you can put one pepper plant in. You might be able to squeeze 2 in, depending on how small they are. You can plant potatoes in a 5-gallon bucket. So you can have several 5-gallon buckets around where you plant things. And let's say you want to plant squash for next year. You can always plant squash up. Squash usually squander all over the ground, and so do watermelons and some other vining type vegetables. But all of them can be grow upward. You can make them grow vertically, and their stems will get hard enough so that they can hang on vertically. So, yes, you don't need a lot of space to start a garden. You just need to have the will to do it, and you can start it with a 5-gallon bucket. You can grow herbs on your windowsill in your house with a small, pot. So you can do a lot with a small space.
If anyone else has a question, you'll have to unmute yourself. No, maybe that's all we had today. That was a lot of great info, though, and I really appreciate it. Again, on behalf of the Filming Foundation, we appreciate you guys coming out and listening to our seminar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.